So here's an idea I've talked about before, but I'm going to reiterate it here. How I would break down my organized play releases during the year. So this comes from, I guess it's a TV's influence on me, because it very much thinks of each year of your organized play campaign, and depending how many I said episodes, I was thinking in my head episodes, how many releases you have. If you did something as small as 9 releases a year, this could be a great setup start for that. So we'll use 10 because I like easy math, and you know how I am. So your year would start at Gen Con. So let's say Gen Con 2023. You're going to start your first year of adventures coming out. And they'd come out from 2023 until Origins of 2024. Now, if you know anything about this whole concept, there's a gap between Origins and Gen Con. Usually about 6 weeks, maybe sometimes 8, but 6 weeks is kind of the average. So, if you start at Gen Con as the big push and excitement, your midpoint is probably somewhere around January, February, which normally would coincide with Winter Fantasy. Now, here's my thought process on that. If you can attend Gen Con, get yourself some tables, boom, get the big push, yay, big push. Do the exact same thing at Winter Fantasy. Now, Winter Fantasy might be a little different. It's always been a kind of WotC-focused, specific, organized play setup. But there's no reason that you couldn't do something at that event. I mean, if you were playing something that fit in with, let's say, 5e, which is what we're talking about now, 5e, why wouldn't they want to do that? You're going to sell more books for them, but you might have something cool that no one's even thought about. My buddies at Esper Genesis is a prime example of that. That's where they picked. Another place you could pick, if you're going to do Winter Fantasy, PAX East. About the same time, they specialize in games. Why not focus on that? That's kind of a smart idea. And make that your midpoint of your story, So if you're doing a storyline that goes from August all the way till, June, July, you sit there and focus on the story you're telling. First part of the story, boom, there. The midpoint, the big cliffhanger, just like TV, would be PAX or Winter Fantasy. And then the big climax would happen at Origins. Now, here's the cool thing when you're doing all that. You're building all that interest, so now you've given people a reason to show up at Gen Con, like they were going to show up anyway, but you give them a big reason, and now you give them an even bigger reason to show up at Origins. Now, when Origins is all said and done, you're all excited. Woohoo! Like I said, you've got 6 weeks. You got 6 weeks between there and Gen Con, and during that 6 weeks, you promote the new big storyline, because the events are going to happen and Origins are going to affect the storyline for the following year. So you get your information back, you get all this stuff, and then you put the new story out, what you're planning. Because you had this already in planning ahead, so no big deal. You just now get to market about it for 6 weeks. And you get to tell the stories of everybody who attended Origins, how great it was, and how it's a great setup. It's going to happen. You have 6 weeks of all you're going to do, and not even put out product. Just focus on getting those people to show up at Gen Con, getting people excited to play there at Gen Con, the actual adventures, and having a great time. And then you just rinse and repeat. There you go. There's your marketing strategy for your own little system. I think it works out well. I know a couple people have tried it, but not gone big with it, but tried it very small. It makes a lot of sense. The toughest part about doing this is providing the content. If you can find a way to get the content out there that people want, this can be an absolute win-win. But you got to do the hard work. So what are you going to do? Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Do us a huge favor. If you like what we talked about, click the thumbs up button. If you didn't like what I talked about, hey, click the thumbs down. We're good either way. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you all later.